Morant with a running start. Elevates. Oh, it dunks. Oh, my goodness.
Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn. His heave is gone. Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining. Conley now a three. Count it. A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance.
Adams going long. Morant. He hit it. John Morant. Insanity.
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. My name is Keith Parish, and I'm joined today by Chris Herrington of the Daily Memphian. Chris, good morning.
What's up?
I'll tell you what's up. The Grizzlies have 2 All-Stars, Chris. It's
2 All-Stars.
It's wild. I was legitimately stunned that Jaren Jackson Jr. was named an All-Star reserve. What was your reaction?
It's hard to claim, like, you know, everyone thinks your team doesn't get any respect. It's hard to claim you don't get any respect when you get an All-Star pick that I'm not sure I would have made myself, you know?
Right. That's, I mean, like we did the All-Star reserves on Fast Break Breakfast, and I basically was like, and I'm putting in number 12, Jaren. His per minute impact is insane. His plus minus is incredible. It's like right next to Jokic for the biggest like plus minus per game. But then we talked about it for a while, and it's like, you know what? I think I might put Anthony Edwards in.
So let me ask you, did you have Paul George?
I did have Paul George in.
Okay, so I did this. I've not done the exercise.
Yeah.
But I got asked on my daily radio hit here in Memphis on the Jeff Hawkins show yesterday. Said, do it off the top of your head. And so I had Paul George. So I had the same picks as the actual picks until I got to number 12.
Yeah.
And at number 12, I didn't have a definitive answer because I was like, maybe Aaron Gordon, maybe De'Aaron Fox. Davis and Booker, obviously, but they missed so much time. Maybe Jaren. I didn't even think about Anthony Davis, but now, like, maybe Anthony Davis. I'm not sure who I would pick if I really sat down and thought about it, did the exercise, but odds are it would not have been Jaren Jackson.
Right. When I did it, it was about 10 days ago. That's before the Grizzlies started losing every one of their games.
Right.
But also it'd been, I guess, less missed time for some guys, because I put in Anthony Davis, I put in Devin Booker. I was basically trying to decide between Lauri Markkanen, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Anthony Edwards. And so
you didn't have the same. See, I had Markkanen. I had Markkanen and Sabonis.
I was
all
like,
the same guys.
I'm a detractor. Yeah. I'm more of a somebody's got to score. Like,
right.
He's really, really good, but I think Jaren's better than Lauri Markkanen just in a vacuum. Maybe
I
I'm wrong
agree.
there.
If you're doing as they're actually going to do, you're
right.
picking teams like, on the playground or whatever. I'm picking Jaren definitely over Lauri.
But even as it broke, once it became like, all right, Anthony Davis might not make it, because like just listening to people talk, I still didn't hear a bunch of NBA analysts picking Jaren. I was still, I was still very, very surprised. And again, because like as a Grizzlies fan who's obviously biased, because I was like, I don't know, I think I might put Anthony Edwards in over him.
Imagine if we were having this conversation 2 weeks into the season.
Yeah.
And I had told you the Grizzlies will have a second All-Star.
Yeah.
It will be Jaren Jackson Jr.
That's right.
I mean, what were the odds of that would have been?
I mean, honestly, on this show, like, I can't remember after which specific game, but there was a game Jaren played that was so good where I was like, for the first time in my life, I'm almost sure Jaren will be an All-Star at some point in his career. And that's the first time that had ever happened to me personally as a Grizzlies fan. I know a lot of fans are super optimistic and always thought like, oh yeah, he was always going to be an All-Star. But like, I was always like, all right, he's good. He's a good defensive player. If he puts it together and there's team success, maybe one day he'll be an All-Star. And I feel like that's going to happen, but I still did not think it would happen this season.
Well, let me pat myself on the back just a little bit.
When
Drew and I did a pod, as we do traditionally, meaning this is the second time, but we did it at the start of the season. We did a predictions pod. One of his questions was, who will be the Grizzlies' second most valuable player this season? Yeah. John Morant obviously being the first. This is before the season started, when Jaren Jackson was slated to miss a month. My answer to that question was Jaren Jackson Jr., not Desmond Bane.
There you go.
I've been a Jaren booster from the jump a little bit back to the draft. You've been a little bit more skeptical on some fronts. Are you a believer now that the 3-point shooting is maybe not ever what it's going to be year 2, which was crazy, but like is legitimate strength of his game?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm more of a I believe he can make 35% of his threes. So that's better than 30%, which he was cruising at for a while.
That's a shot blocking,
Yeah, no, I'll take
power
it.
forward center. Like that's a plus.
I'm not greedy. I'm not picky.
Yeah.
I'll take it. No, he's been awesome this whole year. I mean, if you wanted to get a real hot take for Drew's, who's the second most important Grizzlies player this year, you could have gone John Morant. You could have gone John Morant. You could have
right.
You could have worked out some Jaren is truly the most important.
Yeah.
Or Steven Adams. I mean,
it was built into the question.
Shout out to that Steven Adams stats account. This Grizzlies run of games been tremendous for his content as the Grizzlies look totally lost without Steven Adams in the middle. The Jaren All-Star.
Yep.
Again, like you're saying, would you have put I still would have put Devin Booker over him. I don't know how we're supposed to judge all these mistakes. Like Devin Booker's a better player.
If I'd done the exercise, I think I may have come to Anthony Edwards. The thing about him is, he's played more, but like he did the Luka Doncic memorial, like let's play our way into shape over the course of the season. And so like, to me, there is some demerits for that. Yeah. So Jaren wasn't playing early, but like Anthony Edwards, like didn't have as good of an excuse, he wasn't coming off a foot injury.
Kevin Pelton say like Anthony Edwards is right now on the trajectory where it could be, we look back at the end of the season and we're like, he didn't make the All-Star game because he's currently carrying this Timberwolves team with our guy, Kyle Anderson.
I said a few weeks ago, somewhere, maybe our pod, maybe you and Jeff show about Jaren, but now I would transfer that, no longer applies to Jaren. I could transfer the same sentiment to Anthony Edwards. He's someone I said about Jaren a few weeks ago. He probably won't make the All-Star team, but would have a chance to make All-NBA. Like he may have a better chance at All-NBA than All-Star. Obviously that's no longer true because he's now an All-Star, but Anthony Edwards may be the player that applies to. So, Devin Booker comes back and has a hot, close to the season, that is the weird thing about All-Star, that it's a half season thing.
Yeah.
And for Jaren to get it, having missed the first month, and then the people talk about the minutes. I think the minutes are irrelevant. I don't ding him as much for that because I think people falsely, attach the fouls as the reason. And I demonstrated, I think, even though no one wants to hear it, that's not really the reason.
Yeah.
But whatever the reasons are, the minutes are pretty low. And I do think that is a factor that matters.
I think it's funny when people are like minute, and when people use the minutes excuse, you're like, well, he's third in the NBA in total blocks.
Right.
Like that's incredible. And you're like, oh, he doesn't play that many minutes. Like, well, okay, but he's
right.
The Grizzlies outscored their opponent by more than any other player, for their team in those minutes he play already. It's like, why is he penalized for not playing that many minutes? This is more of like, it's incredible what he's doing. Even like I always say, if you need to add, despite playing few minutes, then say the awesome stat, if that helps you in some way, comprehend how impactful he's been. So Jaren doesn't play on Thursday night against the Cavaliers. The thing I'm struggling with is trying to not, I don't know, like, are we supposed to wrap all these games together? Because they've lost 7 of 8, and that is not what teams that are supposed to be good do. But for most of these games, unless you abide by the Shannon Sharp broke the Grizzlies theory, most of these games you have some pretty solid built-in excuses.
Yeah, no, you isolate every individual game and pretty much all of them, unless I'm missing something, or you lose at Cleveland. You were likely to lose at Cleveland. Period.
The Suns lost stunk.
Yeah,
I mean,
you lose. Okay, yes, you lose at Cleveland without both of your starting bigs. I mean, that's a rough spot to be without your 2 starting bigs. The game against Portland was disappointing, but you're in a close game. It'd be a regular season game against a decent team with a great player, and you're in a close game and they make more shots. I think obviously Steven Adams is a big loss. He is so important to the way this team plays. I think you see that in his absence. I think I've been pretty consistent about this through the ups and through the downs. And I said this before the season started, and when I wrote my first trade column, it was a month ago in the middle of the 11-game win streak when they were tied for first in the West is when it published. And the headline for that column was, "The Grizzlies have a wing problem. Can the trade market fix it?" And I wrote that again when they were first in the West and on an 11-game win streak. It was true then, and it's true again now that they're struggling. It's been true all season. And I think that lack of shooting and lack of perimeter depth is a problem. That said, if the Grizzlies, Steven Adams gets back and the Grizzlies get healthy, like they're going to be really good again. I don't think that it's some like it's gone off the rails, oh no situation. I just think that they are susceptible.
I think to some degree it's a little bit gone off the rails where maybe if they have lost their mojo or their swagger or something,
Right.
a little bit less confident. But yeah, like they were big underdogs on Thursday night, second night of a back-to-back. You're going up against an Evan Mobley, Jared Allen front court without, you're starting Santi Aldama and Xavier Tillman.
I'd say one of the most troubling stretches in this 1-7 is in the one game that they won, where they're home against an Indiana team that's not good and without their best player. And the Grizzlies looked terrible for the first half of that game. And they had to really summon the energy to finally set things right in that game. And so in some ways that performance troubled me as much as any of the losses.
Yeah. I am trying to think if it's been a solid during this little 8-game stretch. And you can even include the Cleveland win, the 11th game of the winning streak where they played the Cavaliers when the Cavaliers didn't have Donovan Mitchell. Like it was a close game. It was a good game and Cleveland's a good quality opponent, even when Mitchell doesn't play. But like in this stretch, I don't feel like there's been a big, or like you feel like the Grizzlies are rolling, there was, I guess the second half against the Pacers, we're like, all right, they've given up and we figured this out. And now we're just taking it to the rim nonstop. And we're hitting these little pick and pops with Brandon and Clark in the middle of the paint. We're scoring every single time. Beyond that, like the offense has not been consistent. It's not been good. And like, again, trying to parse how much of that is just Steven Adams, like the shooting woes. I mean, yeah, we got a wing problem. We know we got a wing problem. Like Tyus Jones has been bad the past 5 games. It's been rough.
I think this Grizzlies starting lineup, when every player is playing up to their capabilities, is great. But you have Steven Adams missing games. You've had Desmond Bane has been up and down because of injury stuff and missing time again with the knee, and so he's been out. And Dillon Brooks has had the worst month. I think Dillon Brooks was really good early in the season, even with his inefficiency.
Yeah.
But the past month has been probably the worst stretch he's played since his second season. It's been particularly bad. And then obviously culminating last night, a little cherry on top of the bad stretch against Cleveland.
A little boink on top. Yeah.
And so due to injury and various injuries and underperformance, they haven't had that starting 5 all together and all playing well. And, as much as they like to talk about, the coach speak is rampant here in Memphis, as much as they talk about the next man up mentality, they're just not equipped for that to matter as much this season as it to be as effective with that as it was.
I was like thinking to myself, like there's a vast difference between getting excited when it's like John Konchar's night to play some,
right,
versus needing John Konchar. Like there's a wide gap between those emotions. Like, oh, cool, Konchar's going to get minutes tonight. Oh, I love it when he plays too. Oh, is he our 8th best guy? This is rough. Sorry, go ahead.
I think the only guy you feel like that about this season is Santi Aldama.
That's true for me. It is.
Yeah.
Like I know we're only allowed to mention the guys who left our team once this episode, but per episode. Like it used to be when a guy was out, you're like, oh, cool, we're going to play a bunch of slow-mo Jaren front court minutes. We're going to play a bunch of these guys front court minutes. And now it's like, we're just going to hang on for dear life, huh?
Right.
Xavier Tillman is starting again. No, Konchar, he and Dillon Brooks both over the past month. I'm like, are they secretly injured? I know he was in the concussion protocol for real, but like their offense is so awful. Like Konchar is at career lows on points per minute and things. And it's been, I think, 11 straight games since he's made more than 1 shot in a game.
And this is the regular season. And I already had no reason to really believe in him come playoff time.
Right.
But your hope with him is like, he helped soak up minutes and give you good minutes in the regular season. And now that's not even happening. And so
what is he signed through 2028?
Yeah.
Whew.
And so, they just don't, when there are cracks in that starting lineup armor, as there have been for the past few weeks, they just don't have the wherewithal. And they've done a better job with it in the front court because Aldama and frankly Tillman has played well by his standards. I think
I try not to put Tillman down because he's played well. He's just not as good as the opponents.
That's right. There's just there are things he
just
can't.
Not as good.
he's a 6'8", 4-bound guy. He's going to struggle to finish and whatever. But like, I think he has acquitted himself well, given his skill set.
Aldama, we should say, against the Cavaliers, career high 21 points, getting the start again. Tied his career high with 4 made threes. Tied his career high with 10 rebounds. Looking great with a mustache. Yeah, Aldama's a guy I get excited when he gets an opportunity. Everybody else is just kind of like I grit my teeth. But let's talk about Dillon Brooks. First of all, Dillon Brooks purposefully hit Donovan Mitchell. There's no question, right?
I think
is there any degree of doubt in your mind?
I think there is minimal question. I believe that was likely intentional. I believe there's enough plausible deniability that people have thrown out a 10-game suspension and stuff like that. I don't see that. I think there's enough. No. Oh, like I fell down and I was flailing but do I believe it was intentional? Yeah, I do.
Yeah. I mean, they're not going to do 10 games unless they're creating a new rule book.
Right. That's right.
Lots of players have done these things. My official stance on almost anything like this is these are professional athletes that are unbelievably coordinated. They know where their limbs go. Right. Most of the time. And if you do, I guess you do the slow-mo, you could probably read too much into like the freeze framing of like, he's looking at him now, he's sizing it up, he's going for the swing. Right. No, I think in the moment, I didn't know what happened. In the moment, I was just confused. I thought Dillon was like rolling up into Donovan Mitchell's ankles, and then you see the replay, you're like, oh, okay, I get it.
Well, I thought in the moment it was just one of those like elbow out, push off, like get off of me things.
Yeah.
And it was a little more than that, obviously, when Sabruder filmed it. Yeah.
So Dillon has this play. Dillon has the dirty foul against Gary Payton 2 in the playoffs last year. I'm worried.
I think the Payton thing, if I'm ascribing intent, I'm ascribing more intent to this Donovan Mitchell thing than the Gary Payton thing. I think the Gary Payton thing was he lost control of his body. I think he was trying to break up the play.
Yeah.
But I do not think in that moment he intended to hit him on the back of the head.
I can agree with that. And I also agree.
I think it was a reckless play.
It was an absolutely reckless play. Yeah. It's a play you can't make, right. And correctly, he was suspended for that foul, for that flagrant 2. I don't think he was intending to hurt Gary Payton 2, but the consequences of his actions, which were poor, where he got hurt. I do know that Dillon is loathed among a lot of NBA fan bases and apparently among other players and coaches to a degree. Maybe I'm, again, just too biased as a Grizzlies fan where I'm not seeing these instances. Cause like, I don't have like a full laundry list of things where I remember like Dillon punched a guy there, or this is not like a Grayson Allen situation where I'm like, oh, he tripped this guy, but people are talking about Dillon like he has this. Am I totally just blinded by my Grizzlies fandom?
I don't remember other specific incidents like these two we're talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly he is a player who plays sort of along the edge.
Yeah.
And like intent, plays physically and talks and yaps and tries to get in the physical space of players and annoy players and all of that. I don't remember, to me, like with Draymond Green, like over a period of time, it's like this laundry list, right, of specific incidents.
Right. Yeah.
I don't remember, and certainly I don't remember prior to the Payton thing, Dillon Brooks being suspended for an incident, right? Or that kind of thing.
Correct. Yeah. That's the only, I'm almost certain that's the only one.
Yeah.
I don't even think he has that many flagrant fouls in his.
He has lots of technicals, but I don't think
he loved it. I mean, he's I don't know if the technical foul point system is holding him back in any way. It doesn't feel like it is. He's certainly going to get suspended later in the year for accruing technical and flagrant foul points. So I'm struggling with this. Is Dillon Brooks a dirty player question? Because I think most people would say yes. And this play, that's dirty. If you hit a guy, but in the groin, like, I don't know what other word to call it. So like, where would you consider Dillon Brooks to be a dirty player, or just misunderstood and moody?
I would not. If other people wanted to call him a dirty player, I would not mount a full-throated defense.
That's where we're at. Yeah.
I would put it that way. I think it's borderline. Yeah.
I'm going to see if I can find out how many flagrant fouls Dillon Brooks has.
But it's interesting that this slump, with this cherry on top of the slump sort of happening right right in the week before the trade deadline. And it's it has made me think a little bit more. It sort of changed. I've been pretty consistent all season about the Grizzlies and what they should or shouldn't do and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the Dillon Brooks thing now, it makes me wonder sort of about the path forward with him a little bit. I don't think, he's going to be a free agent this summer, so they have decisions to make. I think if you were to try to trade him now, it would be selling low. I mean, I don't know if he would function as more than an expiring contract in a trade. And so I don't know. It's an interesting situation with that.
Well, I'm now with this. Has Dillon played himself down into the extension being reasonable?
No, that's interesting. And
the
John
4 years,
Hollinger,
$60 million is like his limit, but the NBA rules say he can sign, and everyone's correctly pointing out like Tyler Hero's making $30 million a year, or
right.
like.
No, the 460 and Hollinger had a piece, and I haven't had a chance to read it yet. I texted with him about it because I heard someone mention it on a podcast, and I haven't had a chance to look it up. But he had a piece recently about the idea of a renegotiate and extend with Dillon using the Grizzlies are actually under the salary cap very slightly, which a lot of people may not know, that you could use that to boost his salary this season, and it's an inducement to then extend off of it.
Oh, okay.
And in theory, like if you wanted, I don't think they're going to do this. In theory, if you traded at the deadline and opened up more cap space, like you traded Danny Green you could give Danny Green to the Spurs and open up cap space and really like do a real like extension, extend and renegotiate and extend and bump that 460 up a little bit higher as an inducement. I feel like even with all the problems Dillon has had, I would have that 460 on the table, and if he would take it, I'd be happy with that. And then I'll deal with it going forward.
Yeah, that's how I feel.
I'm still looking to upgrade from Dillon Brooks if that's possible. And there are people out there who are just who believe in the addition by subtraction by getting rid of Dillon.
Yeah,
I'm not one of those, but I am someone who like. If I can upgrade from him, I'm looking to do that. I think that's hard to do because what he does defensively, I think, is crucial for the team. And not that many other players can do it, but he's not the only player who can do it, and that's why I'm all the way in on the idea of trading for OG Anunoby.
He's not the only player in the league who can do it. We should specify. It's not what I said. No, it's what you said, but I wanted to fill that in because like the addition by subtraction people, like surely they don't still exist. That like if this specific roster,
the Grizzlies have no one else who can do it.
Yeah, like I'm like we're not depending on Zaire or John Conchar or David Roddy to step into Dillon Brooks' role.
Maybe theoretical, maybe in 3 years, like Zaire or Roddy, but not right now. And so that's why, like, but I would be interested in. That's why I am pretty high on the idea of if he's available of trading for someone like Anunoby, who I think would upgrade that spot. And even if it's a marginal upgrade, I think you're at the place now as a Grizzlies team where you're not going to upgrade your top 3 spots. You're just done. You have your core trio. That's Morant, Bane, Jackson. That is your team. And so even marginal upgrades at like, your 4th guy, 5th guy, 6th guy are more meaningful ultimately, especially if it's over multiple seasons, than a short-term upgrade of your 8th, 9th guy.
Yeah. Let's talk more about maybe a possible trade right after this short break. All Grizz all the time. Stay connected and follow at MemGrizz and at Grind City Media across all social channels, including Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for breaking news, one-of-a-kind content, and all the perspectives you won't find anywhere else. All right, so I'm back to Chris Herrington. Chris, the one thing I didn't know that the John Hollinger thing about like the Grizzlies could actually renegotiate, give Dillon a bigger salary. That's very, very interesting. It definitely opens the parameters of things that can happen for this trade deadline. You mentioned you're basically in favor of maybe trading for Anunoby. I like Anunoby's game a lot. Where I'm at right now on it is like how many first round picks is a 4th best player worth, and you've already said like we have our big 3, we think. And so I don't know the answer to that question. So like, what's your best offer that you would pitch for Anunoby?
I'm trying to work on a trade deadline revisited column because I wrote my trade deadline column like a month ago. Right. And it all still applies, frankly. I mean, it's all there. but now we're like a week away and I feel like I need to revisit it. And what I'm struggling with is less of a, here's a bunch of trades than a, here's sort of a manifesto about how I think about the Grizzlies right now kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's a prisoner of the moment of they get a chance to win a title. Like, you know, they need shooting, you need help, you know, you got to make a trade. And then there's the, you know, we're about sustained success. We have this young team. We have all these draft picks, young players. We're thinking long-term. And I've come around to more of a midterm way of thinking in that I think about, you know, John Morant, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr. as your inner core. What's the worst case scenario with that as an inner core? The worst case scenario is that it peaks early, that you don't get like you can dream of this 10 years worth of contention and you don't get it because, you know, of injury or whatever. Like John Morant, people are already worried that he's going to peak early or the injury stuff. And so from a worst case scenario perspective, that would lead you towards trying to open up your window more right now, even if it's at the expense of the long term. Well, what's the best case scenario with those guys? The best case scenario is they are a more modest version of, say, a Duncan Parker Ginobili with the Spurs or a Curry Thompson Green with the Warriors, where maybe you don't win multiple titles together over a 10-year period, but you can compete together at a high level over like a decade long. Like that's the best case scenario. Like you're in the mix for a decade with these guys who are all in their early 20s now. Well, if you look at those Warriors and Spurs teams, there were no other players who span those eras. It was just those three. The roster turned over 100% around those three players over the course of the eras. And so I am focused on, my idea is that like 3 years from now, I don't know how many players are going to be on this team other than John Morant, Desmond Bane, and Jaren Jackson.
Right.
And so I'm thinking about you're right now in the first iteration. You hope you get a second and a third, but you may not. I'm focused on the first iteration. And to me, how long does that last? I think it lasts 2 more seasons after this one, because that's Steven Adams' contract. And that's probably the length of his prime. And at that point, you're probably changing your center and you're changing the way you play. And so, yes, like the Grizzlies have a good draft and develop history. Yes, hitting on those players is helpful to help bridge eras, to help move into new iterations if you hit on players, to help, you know, maintain depth while your star players start to soak up more of your salary cap. But it's hard, and you're seeing it this season, it's hard to have a third of your roster be developmental players when you're trying to win. It's one thing when you're rebuilding, you have lots of darts. The more darts you have, the more likely you are to hit a Desmond Bane. But when you're trying to win and you have on this season's team 5 players who are first and second year players, plus the Danny Green, who's just, you know, when you have that many players who aren't ready to win now, it's really a crutch for your team. And so the Grizzlies already have 5 first and second year players on their roster. They have 4 first round picks in the next 3 seasons and 5 second round picks in the next 3 seasons. You only have so many roster spots to work with. And so I am interested in, I'm willing to sacrifice a lot of draft capital to open the window, not just on this season, but on this iteration of the next 3 years, with the idea that I'm going to be changing up my team a lot at some point anyway. I'm not going to have, maybe 1 or 2 of these guys becomes like a Kevon Looney or Bruce Bowen who has a long run, but only 1 or 2, like maybe Brandon Clark is that guy, or Zaire Williams is that guy, or re-sign Dillon Brooks is that guy. Chances are that, like, you know, Tyus Jones and Steven Adams, all these guys are part of this iteration. They're not part of the second iteration in 2 years. And so if I can increase the window of these next 3 seasons, even if I'm giving up a lot of draft capital to do it, I'm doing it. And the thing about Anunoby I like is he's the only guy available who could turn that trio into a quartet. Okay. That he is exactly the right position, exactly the right age, and the right skill set, that if you can afford it, and if I'm Robert Parra, I think if I want to win, I'm going to afford it. You can add him to that 3 and make it a 4 in a way that I don't think anyone else on this roster does. And so am I willing to give up 2 or 3 first round picks? Yeah, I am, because it's not a 1-year thing. I'm increasing the window of this iteration of the Grizzlies, and I'm not worrying too much about a second and third iteration that I can't guarantee is going to be there anyway.
So I agreed with a lot of what you said. I mean, it was also very encouraging. It's a good encouraging word from the future's bright still, despite dropping 7 of 8. So what are the first you detached? Because like, who cares about this year's first? It's going to be
right.
We think it was going to be late in the first round. It's creeping up. But
yeah,
but you give up the Warriors pick, and then are you throwing in unprotected like far in the future, like 27s or 29s or something?
I mean, my hope is that, whatever contract, let's say I'm assuming it's Danny Green, but maybe Dillon Brooks,
I mean, maybe Dillon.
Right. But let's say it's Green. Let's say it's a young player of their choice. Let's say that's Zaire Williams.
Yeah.
And let's say it's the 23 pick and the Warriors pick in 24. I'm hoping to not put a third pick in that. Maybe you put a pick swap. Maybe you put a pick swap, in 2025 or something like that. But I am not, at the end of the day, I'm willing to overpay a little bit. I think in the NBA, you don't get many chances to pay 4 quarters for a 50-cent piece. And while in like elementary school math, that is not an even exchange, in the NBA world with finite roster spots for a team that has a chance to win, that actually is a valuable thing to do, to overpay a little bit, to boost up the top, to increase the fourth, to improve the fourth guy in your pecking order when you're already set at 1, 2, 3, I think is worth quite a bit, actually.
Yeah. It's a convincing argument. My hesitations with Anunoby also, I don't know if it's fair, but like I have the injury concerns where he's been under 50 games the last 2 seasons. The championship year, he missed 40 games that year, if you count the playoff
there's the specter of past Grizzlies attempts to trade for past Grizzlies in-season trades for missing these wings.
Yeah.
Ronnie Brewer, Jeff Green, Justice Winslow. That's not a great lineage.
No.
But I don't see an opportunity that's going to come to find a player who can both increase your window now and potentially, add to your core. I just don't see that. I don't see any other opportunity that's going to come for that.
So if I'm including Dillon as the matching salary, and I guess people who are the addition by subtraction would be fine with that. I feel like I'm worried we're not advancing enough this immediate season where I wouldn't want to give up. I wouldn't want to give up a lot of future first. If I could get him with keeping Dillon, then I'm much more interested.
Well, this is something I've already written in my maybe published later today column, is that if you think trading for OG Anunoby is going to fix what most ails the Grizzlies at this precise moment, you're going to be disappointed by that. Because the Grizzlies are already a top 3 defense. He's a defense first player.
Yep.
And so to me, that trade is, I think, useful for this season. But the primary reason I'm making it is to set myself up for next season. I'm helping this season, but I'm also trying to set myself up better for next season. And that's my impetus on any trade I make, frankly. That's why I'm not interested in rentals that much.
Yeah.
If I can get a Malik Beasley who's under contract next season, or Alex Caruso is under contract next season, I'm looking at players under contract next season that I think can be part of my rotation in a meaningful way next season as well. And I'm really interested in trading the Danny Green contract, because I think Danny Green's value for the Grizzlies this season is likely marginal. I think his value for the Grizzlies for the rest of what I'm calling this iteration is 0. And so I am trying to trade Danny Green's contract in a way that helps me over the next 3 seasons.
Yeah, I don't know. If I had to guess, I would say Danny Green's going to be here,
I think you're right.
And our team is set. I mean, all these trade talks, I have to keep reminding myself that, like, when the starters are healthy, and if we add Tyus Jones, Brandon Clark, and Danny Green, that might be good enough. Like that might be good enough. Of course, if you're not healthy, you got a problem. Let's finish with this before we get you out of here. We have to mention that of all those first and second year players on the Grizzlies roster, only one was named to the Rising Stars Challenge.
Santi was robbed, man.
That's Kenneth Lofton Jr. This also, this was maybe more surprising to me than the Jaren Jackson Jr. news, only because I didn't know they were going to add G League players.
Yeah, I didn't either.
I was like, what?
I didn't either. The Lofton thing, and I have not, I promised, like, he's going to get me to drive down to South Haven. He has actually not gotten me to drive down to South Haven this season. He's putting up big numbers in the G League, which is not surprising to me. And I think he has as I've said from the beginning, I think he has some real translatable skills for the NBA level. He also has a game that has some problems at the NBA level.
Yeah.
And he's only on the 1-year G League contract. I'll be interested to see what the future holds with him. I'm not really sure which way it's going to head.
Yeah, I mean, no Steven Adams, no Jaren Jackson Jr. We can't get some Kenneth Lofton Jr. Just try it out.
Yeah.
No, I honestly, like, I don't know what he's doing in the hustle, in the G League. Like, I see the stats, but I haven't seen him play. Part of me was wondering, like, is this just for social media engagement? Because he's a social media darling for whatever reason. If you tweet about Kenneth Lofton Jr., you'll get 1,000 likes. I don't know why. He's just a popular, charismatic, fun guy, and it'll be cool. The Grizzlies are going to be very well represented at All-Star Weekend. Maybe I should have planned to go. Oh, well, I guess that ship sailed. Anyways, Chris, a pleasure having you on as always. Everybody out there, make sure you check out the Daily Memphians Grizzlies podcast and the Daily Memphian Grizzlies coverage. Chris, look forward to next time.
All right. Thanks, Keith.